everybody. So nice to see you all from all over the place. Everybody's from all over the place. I have you all muted, and I just want to go through a couple little ground rules and regulations, and a couple of hints and stuff like that. So my name's Stacy. I think I know everybody on here, just about everybody on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep everybody muted. If you have questions, put it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. If you want to not see what everybody's doing and you want to just watch Kurt, who's going to be doing the lesson, go up to the top right-hand corner of your screen where it says view, and you can just hit it on speaker view, and then you'll only see the speaker talking. And I'll tell you what, you'd be smart to do that because Kurt is a handsome devil, and you're going to want to see as much of Kurt as you can possibly see. Number two, I want to make sure everybody has some water in front of them and some food. I don't want anybody getting schnookered here, okay? Maybe a little schnookered, but I hopefully everybody has received the little packet that came with your champagne. So it's the order in which we're tasting and a place to take notes, and then some helpful hints about, you know, what to do and what not to do. And one thing not to do is to do this on an empty stomach. Just reiterating. And then finally, my last thing is I'm going to put my cell number in the chat. And what I want for everyone to do is send me pictures of what you're doing, where you are, what food you have, how much you're enjoying. So my cell number is going in the chat. I want you to send me all kinds of selfies, all kinds of fun stuff, and we're going to post them later on. So let's not make it dirty. Okay, let's keep it clean. So now what I'm going to do is introduce my friend, Kurt Scheifele, who is salesman extraordinaire, and I'll let him explain what he does for a living and how he got into this biz and why he's as fabulous as he is. So go ahead, Kurt.
So I just unmuted myself. So hello, everybody. And Stacy, thank you for those kind words. There's no way I could live up to everything that you ever do say about me. But tonight, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Drinking champagne in December, what's wrong with that? Nothing. So if you take away one thing from tonight to remember is that not everything that has bubbles is champagne, technically. Champagne is a delimited region in France. It's about 60 miles northeast of Paris. By law, if you want to call your sparkling wine champagne, the grapes must be grown from within that area. If you'll notice, French companies that have sparkling wine production in California do not call their wine champagne, they just call it sparkling wine. In Italy, they call it Spumante. In Spain, they call it Cava. In Germany, they call it Sekt. Nobody really is supposed to use the word champagne. It is cheated a little bit here and there, but keep in mind that it is a special limited area, and every plantable acre in Champagne is planted, so production will never, ever, ever go up. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about champagne before we taste the first wine, and then I'm going to show you how to properly open a bottle of champagne. We have 4 sparkling wines tonight, and usually when you do a tasting of several wines, you always start with the less wine and lead up to the best wine. Tonight, we're going to start with the best, then we're going to taste 3 more sparklers, and then go back to the best. We're going to see if these 3 sparkling wines can match up admirably to the one true champagne that we have tonight, the Ayala. Now, the way champagne is made, it's painstaking and it takes years. And that's why it's so expensive. A lot of people say, Kurt, why is champagne so expensive? And this is actually a really good buy at $50, the Ayala champagne, but there are some champagnes that sell for $2,000, $2,500 a bottle. Krug and several other really small producers can be very, very expensive. So there are 3 ways to make sparkling wine. One is called, the cheapest and quickest way is called bottle transfer method. I'm not going to get into that, but it's so simple. is how Andre is made, and some of the really, the $5.99 champagnes out there or sparkling wines are bottle transfer. The middle way to make it is called Charmat bulk process, and that's how you make Prosecco. But the true way is called method champenoise, and that's how all French champagne is made. Basically, the way they make it is this. First of all, you pick champagne grapes a little bit earlier than regular grapes, because you want less sugar and more acidity. As grapes ripen, sugar goes up, acidity comes down. And usually you would pick it about even for table wine, but for sparkling wine, you want a little less sugar and a little more acid. So they'll pick young, ferment either in a tank or in a barrel. And the end result is a wine that has about 10% alcohol. They will then bottle the wine, add a little bit of sugar and a little bit of yeast, and then cap that bottle with, remember the old time Coca-Cola caps? They would cap it with a cap like that. Lay the bottle down on its side for a couple of years. So yeast plus sugar make alcohol. Yeast converts the sugar into alcohol, and one byproduct of fermentation is carbon dioxide. So where does the carbon dioxide go? It can't go anywhere. It's trapped in the bottle. And that's how we get the bubbles. Now, for true champagne, it must lay on its side for 18 months. This bottle happens to lay on its side for 3 years. In the cellar, they're doing other magical things. They're twisting and turning the bottles. They're increasing the angle so that any dead yeast cells that are collected during the second fermentation in the bottle are going to end up down in the neck. So when it's time to make the final product, they take those bottles and they dip them into a brine solution. That's a saltwater solution that's below freezing. And it freezes about 2 to 3 inches of the champagne in the bottle. In that little ice pellet in the neck is the dead yeast cells, or the lees. It's a little pellet of crap that they don't want in there. They then disgorge, meaning that they remove that cap. The pressure that's built up in the bottle from the bubbles pushes out the ice pellet, taking with it any undesirable nonsense. And then they refill the bottle with some previously made champagne, put the cork in it that you see here now, wire cap it. They may age it longer again, and then it's off to market. So you can see with all this time and man hours, why champagne is so expensive, but the end result is fabulous. So there are about 6 designations as far as sweetness levels on champagne, but we only need to worry about 2. The term's brut, and the other term is extra dry. Contrary to what you may think, extra dry is actually sweeter than brut. Think of the word brut as brutally dry. So brut is the driest, extra dry is a little bit sweeter. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Now, the best way to open up a bottle of champagne, you can pop it, make a big sound, have the bubbles come out. That's a lot of fun, but really, the best way to do it is this. So you're going to remove the wire cap. That just blew my whole presentation. I'll have to do that better on the next bottle. So
that's how to decapitate yourself.
That's not how you do it, folks. All right, everybody got their stemware? These are the best kind of glasses, the flutes. But if you don't have flutes, any good wine glass will do. It's not, you don't have to be that fussy about it. Best way to pour champagne, straight in the glass, one time. Let the bubbles come up about 3/4 of the way. When it settles down, you do a second pour to get that about halfway up. Now, when we taste wine professionally, when we want to look at the color of a wine, we take our wine glass on an angle and look down through it. But with champagne, you always look straight in. You want to see the bubbles. The finer the bubbles, the better. And the longer that that champagne lays on its side with the liqueur de tirage, the more of these fine bubbles it's going to make. If you looked at a bottle of sparkling wine that was made by the bottle transfer method, the bubbles would be big like you would see in a glass of soda. So look how small and fine those bubbles are. Now, because champagne was all this time with yeast in it, you're going to get aromas of bread and sometimes toast, brioche, things like that in the aroma, besides the fruit smells. Okay, so there are 3 grapes allowed to be used for the making of true French champagne. Chardonnay, which is a white grape, Pinot Noir, which is a red grape, and Pinot Meunier, which is another red grape. This one happens to be about 55% Chardonnay and the rest, the 2 red grapes. What does each grape add to the wine? The Chardonnay adds all the finesse, the elegance, the lightness, the little lemony character. The Pinot Noir adds body and richness, and the Pinot Meunier adds aroma. Every champagne house will tell you that all 3 are really, really necessary. If you see the term Blanc de Blanc, that means the champagne was made from 100% Chardonnay. If you see a wine labeled Blanc de Noir, that was made from 100% Pinot Noir. That's for those people that want a real rich, full-bodied Chardonnay. The Blanc de Blanc is for someone that wants it to be just so elegant and light and glides off the tongue. So this will be somewhere in between. So let's have a smell. And you do swirl champagne. Don't worry about the bubbles. Swirl them so that you can release aroma. And let's give it a taste. You can spit or swallow. It's up to you. I'm going to spit for a little bit. That wine to me is just a perfect blend of Chardonnay and red grapes. It has elegance, it has finesse. It's got a beautiful texture on your tongue. There's some richness, and Stacy, if you agree with me, I get it almost builds in richness as it's in your mouth for a few seconds. Like it starts out lemony and light and finishes with a little bit of that richness from the Pinot Noir. I think it's a really well-made champagne. So 95% of all champagne that you see and buy is probably non-vintage. And this is intentional. This wine here was made with between 10 and 20% of reserve wines. What they do is every year they'll harvest, they'll make the new blend before anything goes in the bottle. They'll have their tanks and barrels of wine, and they'll start with tasting. And they want this batch of champagne to taste just like the batch they released last year and the year before that and the year before that. So they take the reserve wines in and they do constant blending and tasting, and it's a real art. So if you buy Ayala champagne or if you buy Moet and Chandon or Veuve Clicquot today, it should taste the same as it tasted a year ago, and it'll taste the same way 5 years from now. There are vintage champagnes. And, 100 years ago, vintage champagnes were talked about like we talk about vintage Cabernet and vintage Bordeaux today. But non-vintage has really taken over. People don't want their champagne to be complicated. They want it to be delicious. And they want to know that when they buy a bottle of champagne, they know exactly how it's going to taste. So, Stacy, have I forgotten anything that you can think of?
I think you're doing fabulously.
Okay, did everybody like that? I mean, I loved it. I love that champagne. I think it's terrific.
Feel free to put some comments in the chat or raise your hand if you have a question. Kurt, you want to answer questions along the way, or?
I mentioned James Bond earlier. I was watching Thunderball about a week ago, and he ordered beluga caviar and Dom Perignon 55. I'd like to see that bill. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Cava next. That's the Marqués de Cáceres. This is our sparkling wine from Spain. So when you remove the wire seal from the cork, keep in mind that there's 90 pounds of pressure in a bottle of champagne. So if you just left that, like happened with my first bottle, the pressure will just push that cork out. So the way to open up a bottle of champagne is to first get that cork a little loose. Then hold the bottle at a 45-degree angle, and holding the cork, turn the bottle. Don't try to pull the cork out. The pressure will do that. So if you do it very slowly, you don't want to pop, you want to hiss. Just like that. That saves all the champagne, it saves all the bubbles, and it doesn't get anybody's pants wet. So, Cava is the Spanish version of French champagne. It's made method champenoise, just like French champagne. In some countries, they don't say method champenoise. They'll say method traditionnelle, and that's the same thing as method champenoise. The Cavas are made up in Penedès, which is northeastern Spain, not that far from Barcelona. It's made from 3 grape varieties: Jarello, Macabeo, and Parellada. Jarello is like the Chardonnay of Spain, of Spanish sparkling wine production, in that it is the workhorse. It usually makes up the majority of the blend, and it makes for a wonderful drink. To me, Cava is the best party sparkling wine you can have because it competes with true French champagne, but it doesn't cost you $50. And until Prosecco came along, Cava was really the sparkling wine to go to after champagne. Now it's Prosecco, but I'm not a fan of Prosecco. I think it's good. A lot of people love it because it sells like crazy. But for a more traditional style of sparkling wine, I would look at Spanish Cava. The big name in Spanish Cava is Freixenet. Another big name is Codorniu. This is Marqués de Cáceres. These are people that came from Bordeaux many years ago, their family, and they own one of the most impressive wineries in Rioja. They dabble a little bit in Ribera del Duero, and they dabble a little bit in Cava. So how are the bubbles on this one? Also very tiny, which is good. So that's an indication that it was made properly. It's not quite as frothy as the French champagne, and the reason for that is, I got to do my math here. There's 6 atmospheres of pressure in a bottle of champagne, so that's 6 times 15 is 90 pounds. There's 4.5 atmospheres in Cava, so that's about 67 pounds of pressure. So that's why it's not quite as bubbly, but still is somewhat bubbly. Now, when I smell these two side by side, if you have more than one glass, it's a good idea to keep it and you can compare. So if you smell the French, you get more of that yeastiness. Here you get more fruitiness. And that's because it's only 9 months on its side, as opposed to 3 years for the French. It's lovely. That's so easy to drink, and that's why I call it a great party wine, because we used to have a Christmas party every year, and we only served Cava. And I thought it was a classy way to have a party, and even the beer drinkers and the bourbon drinkers, they all liked it. They thought it was kind of cool. They were drinking it out of a glass like this, and it was just like a classy kind of party until all my friends got drunk, of course, and then it all went down the toilet. So Cava is the value, but to me, it hasn't matched the French yet. We haven't found a rival to the Ayala, but we're not done.
So wait, Kurt, let me just interrupt for a sec. We have a few questions. Macalicious wants to know, why exactly do you not like Prosecco?
Prosecco is made by Charmat Bulk Process, so that's a quicker and less expensive way to make it. And the flavors, to me, it almost reminds me of, there's a term for, there's two basic kind of grapes. There's Vitis labrusca, which are Native American grapes, and there's Vitis vinifera, which are Native European grapes. And Vitis labrusca, in this, grapes that come from the United States have, or I should say America, have a flavor that we in the business call a foxy taste. It's almost like a waxy taste. And that's what Prosecco has for me. Also, they're a little bit sweeter than what we're going to have here tonight. The more traditional versions are bone dry or very, very dry. There are some dry versions of Prosecco, but most of them have a little bit of sweetness. I don't dislike it. I just don't like it as much as the dry ones. Also, when you're looking to buy Prosecco, in Italy, they have these government association. This is a government association that monitors the quality, and it's called DOC, Denominazione Origine Controllata, which means you have to grow this grape in this region and age it for so long in barrels, etc. So there's DOC, and then there's DOCG. The G stands for Garantita, which guarantees the authenticity of the wine. And in Prosecco, there's DOC and DOCG as well. So if you want to buy Prosecco and really get the best, look for that DOCG, look for that letter G. That means it has to come from either Canigliano or Valdobbiadene. These are the two best regions for Prosecco. They're more hillside. The yields have to be a little bit lower, and the lower the yields always makes better wine. So don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Prosecco. I just don't put Prosecco in this class of sparkling wine. Does that answer your question, Macalicious?
And then my friend Jen, the birthday girl, wants to know, how long do these keep after they're open, and how can it be resealed?
Okay, well, if you're lucky, if you're smart, you'll go get one of these little champagne stoppers. All the tops to champagne bottles around the world are universal. So if you get a stopper, it'll fit any bottle. So you put it on there, and they've got these two wings. They clip down underneath the lip. That'll keep it for 3 days. But you won't be able to go past 3 days. Now, when I talk about table wine and how to save table wine from going bad, I always say keep an empty half bottle around with a screw cap if you can. And if you open up a bottle of wine and you know you're only going to drink half the bottle, as soon as you open that bottle, fill up the half bottle, put the screw cap back on, and that'll last for a good 3 or 4 days. But sparkling wine is a little bit different because you don't want to lose the bubbles. But the stoppers work great, and I'm going to stop a couple of these tonight so I can drink some tomorrow.
Hey, Deb.
But believe me, when you take these stoppers off the next day, they're going to pop. So be very careful.
Yeah. Deb and Daryl, is that what you were asking too about the plugs?
If you don't have a stopper, if you have an old cork, you could put that in there as well, but it might push the cork out overnight. And it won't be as good the next day. I'm being honest with you. It won't be as good, but it'll be close. But the stoppers will go 3 days. Any other questions so far? Okay, now we're going to go to the rosé. How do you make a rosé champagne? Well, any rosé that you see in the market today, whether it be sparkling or still wine, is made from red grapes. You take a red grape, Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Merlot, I don't care what it is. If you take a red grape and squeeze it, the juice that comes out is white. The reason why you can make a red wine out of white juice is because when the wine ferments, you keep the skins in contact with the juice as it's fermenting. It'll ferment. And remember what I said, an offspring of fermentation, besides making alcohol, it also makes carbon dioxide and it also makes heat. So the carbon dioxide and the heat push all the grape skins to the top of the tank or barrel. You have to constantly push those grapes back down. That grape collection on the top is called the cap. You have to constantly push that cap down. Sometimes you have to do it every day to keep those skins in contact with the juice. So for rosé, you'll do that, but you'll only do it for about 12 hours, maybe 24 hours at the most, depending on the grape that you're using, because that color will leach out very quickly. And once these champagne rosé producers or still wine rosé producers get that desired color, they'll remove those skins. And then you have this beautiful pink color. So this rosé is also French, but you will not see the word champagne on the bottle because it doesn't come from Champagne. It comes from the Loire Valley. Are you guys familiar with Sancerre, Puy-Fumé, Muscadet, Vouvray from Chenin Blanc? These are all made along the Loire Valley. The Loire Valley is a 600-mile river that flows from the Atlantic Ocean through the middle of France. Makes some beautiful wines. It's a beautiful river with lots of beautiful chateaus along the way. Bouvet is the second largest sparkling wine producer in the Loire Valley. They go back 100 and some years. They make several white sparkling wines and a rosé sparkling wine. So this wine is made from 100% Cabernet Franc. You're all familiar with Cabernet Sauvignon, I'm sure. Cabernet Franc is a cousin of Cabernet Sauvignon. It has similar characteristics, but the skins are a little bit thinner. The wine is a little bit less heavy, a little bit less full-bodied, but slightly more aromatic than Cabernet Sauvignon. So they're crushing that Cabernet Franc, getting the desired color, removing the skins, finishing fermentation, and then following all those same champagne steps that I mentioned with the Ayala. So let's pour some of that out. This is also labeled as Brut. I don't believe they make an extra dry, but I'm really not 100% sure. Bubbles are slightly larger on this one. Not sure how long they keep this on the lees, on the bottle on its side with the yeast for the second fermentation. But it's got a lovely nose. You'll get more strawberry, more cherry in these rosé sparkling wines on the aroma. Lots of strawberry on the flavors, I think, on that one. I think you'll agree with that when you taste it. So I remember one time I did a dinner with just sparkling wine, and we served the rosé with beef. I forget exactly what the dish was, but I remember this going well with beef, and I think this would really be good with something like veal, if you wanted to have a meat, veal or pork, certainly some pasta dishes with a red sauce perhaps, but there are sparkling Burgundies, there are sparkling red wines. I'm not a big fan of those either. This is about as much color as I want in a sparkling wine in this rosé.
So another question is, what's the ideal temp for serving?
That's an excellent question. I don't think you should have your champagne ice cold. When you get it too cold, you mute all the nuances. So I noticed as before the meeting started, everybody was getting comfortable and they had their bottles out on the table, which was a good thing because they were probably too cold coming out of the fridge. But if you take a warm bottle and put it in an ice bucket with water, about 20 minutes is perfect. So I would say 45 degrees would be a good place to start. I have a temperature controlled unit and I have it set at 58. Most people have it set at 55. but I take it out at 50, I take out white wines at 58 and I pour them and I'll put the bottle in the refrigerator. And that first glass is almost always better. I should learn my lesson. It's always better than the wine when it gets colder in the refrigerator because you get more aroma and flavor from it. Even you beer drinkers out there, when you put those in ice for 4 hours, they're just so cold that I don't know how you taste the beer itself. But so not too cold, but just cold, but not too cold. That's true with all white wines, in my opinion.
Here's another question. What's the difference between Champagne and a Cremant?
A Cremant is also a Champagne, but a Cremant has 4 atmospheres of pressure instead of 6. So it has 60 pounds of pressure instead of 90. It'll be very similar to the Cava. It's more frothy than bubbly. It's creamy. And I don't know if the word Cremant means creamy or not, but the wine will be a little bit more creamy. Now, to throw another wrench into this, there is a village within Champagne, because they have several villages, called Cramant, C-R-A-M-A-N-T. But Cremant, what you're talking about, is C-R-E-M-A-N-T. Don't get those confused. One's a village and one's a style. Those damn French, making it so hard on us.
Geez, they're lobbing the questions and you're hitting.
I love it. Because I know I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff, but so if you have all 3, let's go one more time through. I think you could, well, you're going to see the color on the rosé, but I think you could identify all 3 of these just by the smell. That's how distinct they are. And that's a lot of fun. All right, so I picked this last one to go last because I have not tasted this in a long time. I think this is going to have just a little bit of sweetness to it. So that's why I wanted to go last. So this is our lone American version. It's from Oregon. It's from a winery called Montanore. And believe it or not, the guy that owns this winery grew up in New Jersey. His name's Rudy Marchese. Beth, are you here? Beth, if you're here, you might know this guy. He worked for Allied at one time. So Montanore is in the northernmost part of the Willamette Valley in Oregon. The Willamette Valley is like the Napa Valley of Oregon. And because they're in the northernmost part, it's the coolest part of the valley. And they do a great job with white wines. He is also organic and biodynamic. What does that mean? Organic, which is a real buzzword today. Even when you go to the supermarket, I think you see signs of organically grown fruit and vegetables. But organic means that they did not use anything artificial. They respected the land. So they don't use artificial pesticides, artificial fertilizers, no sprays for sulfur or anything like that. Biodynamic, Stacy, that would be another half-hour Zoom call just to go over biodynamic. But biodynamic means that he follows certain rules and regulations. He puts treatments in the soil, and he also follows a biodynamic calendar. If you're fooling around on the computer one night and you have 20 minutes to kill, Google biodynamic calendar, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It tells growers when to leaf pull, when to turn the soil, when to harvest. It's incredibly insane. And you might think that they're all on drugs if you're a biodynamic farmer. But I can tell you that it's not a new thing. It's been around since the 20s, and it's getting more and more popular. So let's give this one a try. This is made with 4 grape varieties. Gewürztraminer, I'm going in order of percentage. Gewürztraminer, Müller-Thurgau, Riesling, and Pinot Gris. These are 4 grapes that are indigenous to Germany and Alsace, northeastern part of France near the German border.
Well, you can taste the Gewürztraminer immediately.
Yep, that should give a little spice to the wine.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Molly's enjoying this one. She's got a little head bop going. I can tell
There
that.
is a little sweetness on this. It's almost, it reminds me of peaches. When you taste it, if you think of peaches, I think it's like biting into a ripe peach.
How about the challengers? You guys liking this one?
Vivace, which means brisk something, but it's like vivacious. Something with a lot of spunk, a lot of energy.
Like you.
Well, after the Ayala, why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, that one's really different.
Yes.
That would be a good party wine too.
Yes. Very lively. All right, you people in Tinton Falls, thumbs up or thumbs down on this last one? Okay. Very good.
Love it.
Nice.
Love it.
All right. Oh, now the Macalicious went to Bubblicious now. I like that. How about Mary? Mary, how about you? Up, down? Okay. And the
There's
Margie,
the four. There's the lineup.
it's like a breakfast bubble, Molly says, or brunch bubble.
Yeah.
All right, we got the
Pancakes and
cinnamon-
Vivace.
Yeah. The cinnamon.
Well, I think all four of these, I would be proud to serve on my table with friends. And Champagne is a good food wine. We always have it on New Year's Eve with lobster tails, and it's just the best combination ever. But I purposely didn't eat my dinner yet tonight, so I'm going to have some of these with some roasted chicken. But it's great food wine. Don't think that you can only drink this for anniversaries and weddings and launch ships with it. You can do a lot of other stuff with it.
Mary says she has champagne with sushi.
Oh, perfect. It's perfect. Yep.
Chinese food and popcorn. I think it's great with popcorn, the salty sweet thing.
Yep. Well, Chardonnay is supposed to be very good with popcorn as well. So if you get a champagne that's got a lot of Chardonnay in it, you won't know, unfortunately, a lot of times what the blend is on the champagnes, the non-vintage champagnes. Unless it says Blanc de Noir or Blanc de Blanc, you won't really know what the blend is. But it's usually a blend similar to this, like 55 Chardonnay, 35 Pinot Noir, and 10% Pinot Meunier, something like that. As I mentioned, Champagne, there's no growth. That's why a lot of the champagne houses have gone to the United States. They've gone to Australia, and they've opened up sparkling wine houses there so they can grow their business. They usually have about 5 years of reserve wine in their cellars at all times. When their reserve stock gets below 5 years, they'll raise the price just to slow down sales. They always want to have 5 years of reserve wines to go back to make their non-vintage blend. So when champagne prices go up, they're not being greedy. It's just that this is how they can maintain their style and maintain their quality. There's limestone and chalk in the soils of Champagne like there is in Burgundy. And that's why, even though there are good sparkling wines around the world, but nobody, in my opinion, has ever really matched the overall quality of true Champagne. And it's because of the soil, because of the climate, what the French call terroir, site-specific, the microclimate that they have there, the soil that they have there, the way they do business. It's just an incredible product. Well, I hope you all liked it. I did. We get the thumbs up. Stacy, what do you think? Did anybody else throw any questions out there?
Oh, wow. Look at this Bubblicious group. They're going crazy.
They're having a ball.
Yeah. And then where are the McGills and the Rops are quiet. They're talking. You see them at the table there? How about Meryl's digging? She's cheersing. The DeGraves are looking lovely as ever.
Well, I'll cheer everybody here tonight. So thanks for coming.
And Jen, the birthday girl. Let's all cheer. Toast Jen. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
So wait, Jack Sullivan is asking Kurt, are these champagne, wait, let me see what that said. Oh, stored at what temperature and caves? Unmute, Jack, and tell us what you're saying here.
Buy a bunch of champagne.
Here he comes. Oh, no, unmute, bro.
What temperature are the cellars, the caves?
Wait, I'm asking him to unmute. There we go. There you go, Jack.
Yeah, because Kurt, how you doing?
Hi.
Now, what temperature are they stored at? Like,
At the Champagne House?
yeah. Yes.
Oh, it's in the 50-degree range. Yeah, in the mid 50s. I mean, you need a sweater or a jacket and a nice pair of socks for sure.
So are they? You've been to California. I've been to the Champagne Caves.
They can be. There's a lot of caves that were dug out in California. They use the same machine that they drilled coal mines with. I've seen them in action. To put a cave in, though, there's two ways to. I mean, if you put a cave in that has natural stability, that's one thing. But most caves that are dug out in California are dug out for show. I mean, they're there for temperature control as well, but they have to be gunnited like you would like a gunite swimming pool. So you dig the cave out, but you have to reinforce all the structure. Otherwise, it wouldn't be safe. But they're beautiful. I've been in dozens of them, and we taste out of the barrel in there, and it's an ambient temperature. It stays the same all year round. It might fluctuate 1 or 2 degrees between winter and summer, but no, the initial cost is high, but I don't know, maybe in 10 years you recoup all that money, and then now you're ahead of the game. Like the guy in the Loire Valley, all the caves were dug in the Loire Valley years ago to build all the chateaus along the river. And all those caves now have been utilized into wine storage caves. So I think Moet and Chandon has something like 50 miles of caves. 50 miles. You travel in their caves in a golf cart. Most other companies are much smaller. Champagne also, the Champagne houses own very few vineyards. Some of them own no vineyards at all. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of growers there, some with only a couple of acres, that sell all their fruit to the Champagne houses. And the price of the grapes is determined by the French government. It's so strictly controlled. It's just unbelievable how they do business there.
Kurt, here's another good question about Montanore. Have the fires affected the Oregon vineyards?
I don't know of any damage to Oregon vineyards. Even California, the vineyard, there were some that were completely gone, but most of them survived. In Oregon, I haven't heard of any, at least from our producers, of any damage. Now, smoke taint is another thing, because your vineyards can survive, but if you get smoke blown in your direction for a prolonged period of time late in the season, it can be a problem. But I haven't heard of anything yet.
Good question. I like that.
I found that wine producers help each other like no other business. I remember years ago, there was a fire in Sonoma, on the Sonoma Mountain. We were selling a winery back then called Moon Mountain. And they lost everything. And half a dozen wineries around them not only let them move whatever was salvageable into their wineries, they gave them thousands of gallons of wine so they could stay in business. Didn't want anything in return, just gave it to them, helped them out. It's amazing. The wine community is incredible. So if there's smoke taint, that could be a problem, and I'm sure that sister wineries in the area will be there to support them.
Did one more question. Let me see here. Did all the champagnes we tasted tonight go through the little riddling process?
Yes.
And then they said, "We love you." I'm not sure who the bubblicious. Do they love you, or do they love me, or do they love the bubbles? I can't decide. Look at them. There's like a million of them at that house. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You had to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Everything was hand riddled. No, I should say the Montanore and the Ayala were hand riddled. The Caceres and the Bouvet were machine riddled. They have these big machines that grab like whole pallets, and they'll shake them, increase the angle, put it down, and then go to the next one. And also remember I talked about the brine solution, dipping it in to freeze the neck. On the two middle ones, that's also machine done. It's cool to see them do it by hand though, because especially the disgorged part, because it's like a big umbrella and there's a big lamp underneath, and they pop that cork and the pellet flies out. I'm sure it would take your eye out if it hits you in your eye. But doing things by hand like that, I love, because it's just like the old world way to do it. But the proof is in the end result, right? In the end wine. That's what counts.
Yes, yes. Any other questions? This is a much calmer group. Either they're very, very drunk, or they're just behaving themselves and being nice and respect. Yeah, look, now Deb's going to go crazy. Anybody have any other questions? No, I think, Meryl, do you have a question? No? Okay. This is great. I'm totally tipsy.
I'll tell you, as they've warmed up a little bit, they've gotten even better. So hence my point earlier about not getting them too cold.
They want to know what your favorite is.
Tonight,
Yeah. I don't know.
the Ayala. I'll go with the front runner. The Ayala. Yeah. But I really think for certain, if I'm going to have certain foods, that rosé would be a good choice as well. And rosé is just so popular right now. I mean, we've never sold so much rosé, and it's a lot of French. Again, French rosé from Provence especially has taken the world by storm. There's also different ways to make rosé, but I was talking to this guy, Marc Perrin, when I visited him in Provence, and he said, you have to make rosé from the ground up. You can't, like, one way to make rosé is when you're fermenting red wine in a tank. Remember I said you're going to get all the color from the skins? Well, when it starts to get pink, sometimes they'll bleed some of that wine off and make a rosé on the side from it. He said that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is you have to grow the right grapes in the right places, harvest at the right time, et cetera, and do all the right things. But rosé is so popular right now. I'm selling more rosé into the winter than I ever did. It used to be just like from May to August, you would sell rosé. But now people are just, I think rosé on the Thanksgiving table is just a winner. I mean, it goes with so many different kinds of foods, and there's so many different things on the table on Thanksgiving that rosé is a pretty good choice. So the rosé would be, this rosé would be a good choice on certain occasions.
All right, I got a question for this. If you get this one, I'm just gonna like lay down and on the wire basket. Why is it turned 6 times?
I don't know.
Oh,
Did you look that up?
I did not.
Why did they all turn 6 times?
I don't know. Do they, Jeff? Jeff's not nodding his head. Yes, they turn 6 times.
This will be a new one. I've not heard this.
All right. Stump the stumper. All right, let's see. What's the secret to curing a bubbles hangover? They're the worst.
Well, the hangovers when I was growing up was from Asti Spumante, and I think that was a lot of sugar.
Too much, way too much sugar.
Yeah. It shouldn't affect you any more than regular wine. It's just, in fact, most wines today, especially red wines, are really high in alcohol. When I started in the business a long time ago, I'm not going to say how many years, but 12% alcohol was normal. And that's what these are. These are 12%. But if you look at red wine today, especially Zinfandel and Cabernet, it's 14.5, sometimes 15% alcohol. And that extra 2 or 3 degrees really makes a difference. Here's another thing that's puzzled me over the years, and I can't figure out why. California domestic wines get me buzzed faster, and I have a bigger hangover than European wines. There's no reason, there's no rhyme or reason for that because it's just alcohol. But I swear that it's true. Now, older wines, you know that as wine ages, alcohol reduces. Years ago, I always wondered, like if you taste a young white wine and it's got a lot of acidity, acidity is that little puckering, bright, zesty quality in your mouth. And you need that acidity for wine. And if you measure that, and let's just say it's 3.2 grams per liter, you taste that same wine 5 years later, and the acidity is pretty much all gone. But if you measured it, it would be 3.1 grams per liter, only down a little bit. So I always wondered what happens to acidity in wine. So I went to California one year and I visited 10 wineries and I asked 10 winemakers, what happens to acidity in wine? And I got 10 different answers. The best answer was, when you find out, let me know. But one guy actually did say it esterifies. And that means that acidity turns to esters. That's why older wines have more aroma than younger wines. So molecules of acid and molecules of alcohol in the aging process form together and create esters. The more esters, the more aroma. But the acidity lowered a little bit and the alcohol lowered a little bit. So a young wine today that you buy at the store, say you're going to age it, that's 14% alcohol. When you drink it, if you drink it 5 years from now, it might only be 13.7% alcohol. Does that answer your question?
Now, yes, and now we also have 6 turns minimum needed to securely maintain the cork. 1 turn equals 1 atmosphere. Thank you, Google.
So 6 atmospheres of pressure. Yeah.
Okay. And then the Bubblicious people.
But that means a Cremant would only have 4 turns.
Right. Interesting. The Bubblicious people want to know which one of these you would serve with manicotti. Or as they say in South Philly, manigut.
The rosé. Definitely the rosé. Manigot.
Nice. Yes, that's what my sister-in-law Tracy would say, right? Anyway, all right. Anybody else? What else we got here? Thank you, everybody. This was lovely.
Stacey, that hour flew by.
That was, yes, that was an hour. That was an hour. Thank you, everybody. It was lovely to have you all.
Thank you for coming.